probably the best Del Close story like that he wrote in Wasteland it's not explicitly autobiographical, but did you read this one, the one about the like servant of Krishna?
I didn't read that one, actually.
Yeah, it stuck out to me because I was like, all right, he's getting into some kind of like theological stuff here, so this seems like an interesting one to read. And I skipped over a lot of the John Ostrander stories, the ones that were just by him, but I read all the ones that Del Close either co-wrote or wrote entirely himself. And I think this was just Del Close with Ostrander doing some like script continuity or something. But the story is that like, it's ancient India or something. And the main character is this dude who's like a like devout Krishna follower, or like, I don't know if he's a priest. I think he's like, some kind of Brahmin or something like that, like a nobility, he's whatever, in whatever case, he's like got a chill life and he's like a devout follower of Krishna. And then after like serving Krishna his whole life, he dies, and Krishna says like, okay, so you can either live 100 lifetimes as Krishna's friend, or you can live 10 lifetimes as Krishna's enemy. And the guy says, well, I would not want to be your enemy, but I really want to get out of the cycle of reincarnation. I want to be like with you in like the noble paradise or whatever. I don't really even know if Del Close's understanding of Hindu theology, like how accurate it is. Like if you get to be with Krishna once you're like done with the cycle of reincarnation, I guess that makes sense. But anyway, so that's what he wants. And he's like, well, I guess I'll live 10 lifetimes as your enemy so that as quickly as possible, I'll get to be with you. And even though, I hate the idea. And Krishna's like, I was afraid you'd say that. And, he like basically lives like 10 lifetimes, like being devoured by like a giant spider with Krishna's face. And then he's like, but only my love for Krishna is getting me through this, but then like, after the 10th lifetime, he's like, but wait a minute, I've lived 10 lifetimes, he finds himself reincarnated in the same situation. And he's like, but wait a minute, like, Krishna, you said like, after 10 lifetimes is your enemy, that like, I would be able to be free from the cycle of rebirth. And Krishna says like, only when you have learned to hate Krishna can you truly be my enemy, and then like the hell will begin.
Oh my god.
And then like you see that arguably like the most interesting part is that then like the guy starts like screaming like Krishna, and then like the comic cuts to like a guy in like what seems to be the contemporary United States, like wearing this like helmet or like these like Oculus Rift type goggles, and they like there's a bunch of like people in like a military base or something, and they take the goggles off, and he's like, what happened, did it work, did I pass life regress? And they're like, you didn't do anything, like you're nobody, like go back to your cell. And then like they start talking to him, like these sort of researchers like doing this sort of like weird like Joe Rogan DMT experiment, like
oh my God.
past life sort of a psychic testing, start talking about like Krishna. It's like he was screaming about Krishna, like what does it mean? And then the guy like overhears them and he's like, Krishna, like finally embracing like his hatred of Krishna after like all these lifetimes. But it's interesting in light of like the sort of psychic like experiment context, and also the spider theme. It stuck out to me. Yeah.
Well,
and we
of
see the spiders coming up again and again. I mean, I know people hate spiders, it's a common fear, but I don't know. There's something to it.
Do you think Andrew Getty like did a Second City class ever?
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised. There is like it's kind of making me think a little bit of our recently having read Prisoner of Infinity and talking like Jason Horsley's book and talking about trauma with him on that other episode. Like I feel like there is that element of like childhood trauma. Like I was thinking about Andrew Getty when I was reading Prisoner of Infinity, and like it's that's a big theme like in The Evil Within and everything, is like the trauma in childhood, and that's a big theme I think for Del Close as well, like even if some of it isn't accurately represented in a lot of the stories that he tells. Not to say that The Evil Within is like Andrew Getty's accurate experience, but this theme, like, and then that aspect of like the sort of spider lords like does seem to come out a lot, to having to do with this sort of trauma. And Whitley Strieber, whose name I've now learned to pronounce, also would talk about shit like that, like the spiders, so like the spider entities like torturing people. So I don't know, something about spiders that like really bothers people, which is weird because, well, I guess they're poisonous. Like a big spider like in the jungle could kill you, so I guess it kind of makes sense as a primordial fear in that way. but I don't know.
They catch you in a web that you don't see, like they
but that
spin invisible webs that you get trapped in. They suck your blood. They're kind of vampiric.
That is a common image of getting caught in the spider's web, which I guess maybe if the spider had a big web and you were running away from something else, like that could be bad. But usually human beings wouldn't get caught in the web.
Well, I mean, you don't get caught in a web the way a fly would, but it's still
but that is still like a constant, like
think about.
That's a recurring image or fear that people have. Like people constantly think about like being in the fly's position, even though there isn't like apparently a rational reason for that. But
it's just the idea of if a gigantic spider is like hella scary. Because,
exactly. But
it's bad news. But also, the other part of that story that might be inspired by real life is like the whole government medical experiment aspect, and I think
he definitely had experience with that. I mean, for sure.
Oh, well, yes, quite literally. So just to describe, he started getting into psychedelics around 1960. He was very into peyote buttons, which I guess weren't even illegal back then, and he would order them in the mail. And the book says he was determined to experience whatever reality substances he could find, ostensibly with the idea of improving his performances. This is, I guess, a quote from him. I had read Huxley's The Doors of Perception and decided, well, it's necessary I should experience these things too. And right around this period, I found these people around town who sold this chemical, mescaline. It's a solvent, a lubricant used in photography. Yeah, a reality lubricant. And we take it and play elaborate games. This is where a lot of our ideas about shaping reality came from. But he goes further because as he hustled to find ways to make money for food, lodging, and drugs, Dell signed up for a government experiment in a laboratory in Brooklyn run by the Air Force, which was preparing for the upcoming Mercury space program. Scientists were studying REM, rapid eye movement, and conducting experiments on human subjects. As Dell explained it, his job was to take LSD, a comparatively new, very pure psychedelic. He was then hooked up to a machine and allowed to sleep. When the REM machine indicated that he was dreaming, the scientist would immediately wake him. Are you dreaming? Yes, I am, you motherfucker. What were you dreaming about? I don't know, bunny rabbits. And he says about the experiments, I didn't like it. I grew tired of it real fast. He said in a different interview that the scientists were curious as to which kind of person would function better strapped into a tiny capsule hurling through space, an introvert or an extrovert. Dell gladly answered an ad in the Actors Equity Bulletin Board that read, wanted, test subject for government program, must be willing to take drug. LSD was the drug of choice in clinical psychological experimentation, and he always advocated the use of government drugs because of their strength and purity. He was strapped into a fake capsule and injected with a massive dose of pure LSD-25, and the capsule, quote, took off. All was well with Dell's space exploration until someone opened the hatch and handed him the lunch menu. Dell watched as the letters on the menu jumped off the page and began running around the capsule. One phrase leapt up off the paper at him, tuna salad sandwich, which at the moment seemed to be the most uproariously funny words in existence. The door closed, then reopened with a tuna salad sandwich, which he stared at for a long time. He never went back for a second session. Dell later told friends he didn't return because he had taken acid and they wanted him to report on its effects, but he felt he couldn't truthfully report because his knowledge base regarding drugs was too great. Rather than admit his drug history, he quit the program.
Yeah, all right.
Or did you?
I feel,
Did you quit the program? And then there's the punchline, just to finish here, because he would always tell the story, right?
Right.
So he was, I guess this is in the late 50s when that happened, maybe 58, 59. And I think he went back to St. Louis. But then when he got there, there was a letter that was forwarded to him from the United States Air Force that, according to his own telling, read, Dear Mr. Close, you still owe the United States Air Force one dream.
No. I mean, yeah, like
so
that's
funny.
Could just be like, his idea of like a joke, but I almost could see that actually happening.
Because that's what's weird about it.
Like
is
as
that
some kind of like weird, like, follow-up experiment or something. The real point of it was to like, creep him out with this message like down the line.
Possibly. It's not quite getting like the phone call from, the God phone call from the ET, like telling you you're a chosen child. But like this is very similar to his future friends, the people in the Grateful Dead that were going in for LSD experiments around the same time in Palo Alto.
And he like actually like designed like light shows for them, right? He was like the original like rock and roll light show. Another great innovation of his, in addition to the Herald, was that he did like the first like LSD.
He's claimed to have developed it for the first time. And also it doesn't quite hold up with me that people have established that he's lied so often in his stories and changed things up. I don't quite buy his excuse that he didn't want to disclose his extensive drug history to the Air Force investigators, so he just ditched the program without finishing it. First of all, like if you're afraid of them kind of coming down on you, like they're giving you LSD. I don't think they're not gonna
care. Like they probably would have asked you to begin with and eliminated you if they didn't want, like, they would have given you the chance to opt out for that reason. Like they would have screened you for everything that would have been disqualifying beforehand. Yeah. Like that's part of like doing any kind of research. And also like if you're truly a struggling artist, like they're not going to fucking pay you if you bail out of a sense of like, oh, I don't want to lie to the government. Like what kind of rebellious improv guy are you? I'm going to foregoing my $200 or whatever because like I feel too bad about lying about my drug use.
He wasn't yet. He didn't worried yes that they might get upset. The U.S. Air Force.
Exactly.
He didn't yes and them. He, they were trying to establish, the common reality for the scene, and he didn't want to go along
exactly.
with it.
He was like, they're like, wow, it sure is a hot day on Mars in our like spiritual astral projection machine help contact program.
And he said, what do you mean we're on Venus?
It's not.
It's on Venus and it's cold.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean, it very interesting.
What a bad scene partner. Oof.
I mean, also, it is worth mentioning, like, because they advertised this in the Equity magazine, which is like, the labor union for like stage actors, and like how many aspiring up and coming actors got sucked into like basically MK. They say it was for NASA, but I mean, I think we're talking about a fine line here when the U.S. Air Force is giving you LSD. It seems like, and then he's in the mental hospital later, and they're giving him LSD. What kind of psychiatric treatment is that exactly? You know what I mean? Like an actual institution is just, oh, this guy had a mental breakdown. You know what? We should give him acid. What? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Were they getting his one dream from him when he got institutionalized later, or was he just sucked into like multiple MK programs? Or it's just
I mean, in a way it does make a lot of sense because like, I mean, based on his telling of it, I mean, like, when you look at like these sus people, like sometimes you're like, okay, are they the scion of like some like long standing like rich family, like what wealth do they come from or whatever. But sometimes like even if they do like come from like a rich background, like maybe that money did dry up in some way, but like a lot of the time, like, as Doug Close says, like seeing an ad like, most people willing to do drugs, like sit around and dream, like that is attractive to like bohemian, like artist types. And like whether they even, whether they even like are sus to begin with, like a lot of the time, like they do easily get drawn into that type of thing, like just by like the nature of it. It's like, what? Free money to do acid? Like, yeah, bro. And then like, next thing
and they don't even think about that because none of this shit, nobody knew anything about this stuff back in the 50s, right? I mean, like there was no exposés, there's no church committee back then. So, and
even now, I feel like people in the arts are incredibly naive about anything like that. Like for instance, getting a grant from the Navy to teach robots how to dance, or something like that. That seems cool. Yeah, like what could the practical application of this be? It's not like, a robot that can pirouette can do anything physically. If you can stand on your tippy toes and do ballet, like you can probably like get up after being knocked down or run up the stairs really fast too, or anything like that. Climb up rocky hills in Iran. But
exactly. Who knows what the dual use of these experiments that like people like Del Close were subjected to actually were at the end of the day. We can assume that. So it's like, that's
and who knows like how much of that, like, because experimental theater, like, the Herald is also a bit of a laboratory. So like, if you're in that environment, like those ideas seep in and then you sort of like, that's your framework for like how these things play out, or how these things should be done. You're being influenced like by those ideas. Like, I think a clear link to this is the L. Ron Hubbard shit, because like, the way that he tells it, I feel like he was at like a Dianetics center in like Wichita, but I wonder if, because at least like in the comic version of the Del and L. Ron story, which is like one permutation of the story, that's been told many times about their friendship, it's all pivots around like a dream that Del had. Did you read that one?
I did. It was a weird dream of like there was a goat involved.
Yeah, there's a satanic goat, like literally like it has the face of like the Baphomet, it's like a smirking, like very satanic looking goat. And like Del was basically having a dream where like there's a goat, the evil satanic goat, and there's also like a bear that's humming around going like da-dum 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 da-dum, and like the goat is like, you must leave the island, and Del is like, but Yell's like, yes, but the island is all, I guess he says, yes, but the island is all I know, like how can I leave the island? And the goat is like, you must go, and like kicks him with his horns, and then he's like he falls off. Yeah, he falls off a cliff like into the water. He's like, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, and then like it turns out Doug Close is describing that dream like on the psychoanalytic couch to L. Ron Hubbard, and L. Ron Hubbard's interpretation is that like the bear that's humming like da-dum da-dum is like his mother's heartbeat, and the goat is like his mother's rib cage, and like when it hits him with his horns, it's like him being forced out in birth, so it's like a birth dream or whatever. But it's interesting that like the context is that L. Ron Hubbard is doing dream analysis. Like he even says in the story, like I usually don't deal with dreams. I leave that to the cyclos or whatever, like but
it's also
it's weird that in that context he's doing the dream stuff, which apparently was what he was doing with the Air Force as well, like dream-based research. Even if that was outside of L. Ron's usual wheelhouse, like he was suddenly doing dreams. And
it is interesting. It is interesting. And of course, he also in that anecdote, like a part of the punchline of that was like L. Ron Hubbard was complaining about how the IRS and like the American Medical Association were like hounding his ass and how frustrated he was, and Del Close was like, you should like think about starting a religion, and he was like, maybe I will, and then that's why Scientology exists. So like I mean I think he's exaggerating that. I don't think like Del Close is literal. Didn't Robert Heinlein, wasn't he the one who also said that he gave him an idea to like turn it into a religion?
In the comic version, weirdly, Del Close doesn't give him the idea. L. Ron just says like out loud, while he's muttering about how he's upset about it, he says like, I should really just turn this into a religion. But Del Close did tell it like many times with the sort of Heinlein element of like, I gave him the idea. So, it seems like bullshit, but who knows, like, again, like in this context, they're like just doing some kind of like free form, like psychoanalytic relationship, and they're like fencing with sabers or whatever while they're like, gaming this out. But who knows what the real context of their friendship was. It is interesting that like in the book, there's this weird thing where L. Ron, he asks him to sign a copy of Death's Deputy, which is weird because like that's a very obscure L. Ron Hubbard book, and
L. Ron asked to buy it off of him because
at first he's like, will you sign Death's Deputy and for me? And L. Ron Hubbard is like, wow, Death's Deputy, even I don't have a copy of that, can I buy it off you for $3? And he's like, yeah, okay. But that was like an element of verisimilitude, weirdly, because that's like an obscure L. Ron book that you wouldn't think. It was like a weird detail, but I don't know. I do believe that they definitely met, but who knows what the real context is. Whether it was they were just doing Dianetics and auditing, or like if they met in the context of some like fucked up Air Force dream program / like witch coven. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, speaking of witch coven, he also the book also says that this is a weird thing that I guess Del Close wrote a letter in 1990 to John Brent's son. John Brent, I guess, was like a beatnik poet that he became pretty tight with, and they would do a lot of drugs together. And Del Close said about like them hanging out in 1963, we were aware that every time we stuck a needle in our arm, we might end up dead. This fostered a screw you attitude towards death. John used to describe his vision of the death experience as he expected it to be, in typical cartoon fashion. Brightly colored concentric circles close about your field of vision, and you see, written in front of you in backwards script, "That's all, folks." On his, and this is a weird comment. On his altar, oh yes, we always had altars, was an old-fashioned, long-billed Donald Duck with a scythe. He called him Donald Death. That's very
Awesome.
like I'm your puppet, Kenneth Anger,
Yeah.
like Mouse Heaven.
Yeah,
like, what
it's
the
extremely
fuck?
Mouse Heaven.
You just had like a creepy altar with like an old Donald Duck like dressed up as Death that you like prayed to and called him.
Yeah,
Donald
he was
Death.
kind of like the original. I mean, I guess he wasn't the original because it was around the same time that like the more well-known ironic Satanists emerged. But he was like very much like someone who is like, people always call me a Satanist, so maybe I will become a witch. But like he actually did. He got like big into witchcraft, and he would attribute like his actual ability to get off of cocaine or heroin. I don't know like how successful it even was, but he would say like that it was due to like his rituals that he had performed. That
Yeah,
he
he
had
cast a
success
spell.
with that. Yeah,
like he
he went up to Canada like and met with a coven or something, and they purged him. Yeah,
It's really wild. And
he
then
said like it
you know
took slowly, right? Like at first, like it didn't work, and he was like, "It's bullshit." But then, like gradually over time, he was like, "Wait a minute, I don't want to take cocaine anymore." You know?
yeah. I guess he beats it, though. He was still like gobbling speed and doing all kinds of other things. And let's see. And then he kind of like starts doing so many drugs in like the mid 60s, like going into like 64, 65, that his like performances are becoming erratic and it's causing problems. And I think he gets passed over to be like one of the directors at like Second City. At some point, and he's very mad about it. And then he ends up in 1965, another one of these figures that, you know, packs up their car and drives out to Los Angeles in 65 and immediately kind of like runs into a lot of these people. I mean, for one, he reunites with his pal, Hugh Romney, who I don't know exactly when he started turning into wavy gravy, but he was well on his way by this point. I guess, you know, he went out to LA like thinking he'll get TV work and stuff like that. And he got a few like TV roles. But then, you know, he ended up living with Hugh Romney, wavy gravy, and his wife and a few others who would come and go in a hotel on Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood that they had dubbed Misto Acres. Then he has a show that he puts on. He was working in TV, but he was worried that it would erode his counterculture reputation. Interesting. He's already thinking about his counterculture reputation. And Dell felt he needed to preserve his integrity. Timothy Leary was coming west to deliver a lecture, so Romney decided to rent the same auditorium and, quote, talk about silver meat cream, SMC, bits of rancid hamburger and gelatin capsules. And for entertainment, we've got rock and roll, recalled Dell. So he put on a show called Lysergica Go-Go, which I guess was intended as a gentle, respectful put down of Tim Leary and the then burgeoning LSD scene, with the over 500 attendees receiving capsules filled with Safeway hamburger as they entered the incense-filled auditorium. That's just like bizarre and creepy and like gross that they're like, I don't know if they actually gave out like rancid hamburger meat in capsules, but the idea that like fucking disgusting. Like, probably give people salmonella. What the fuck? So I guess in this play, Leary's lecture techniques were parodied, after which the theater darkened and Dell trained an ultraviolet projector on the stage, and people danced to a live band while pressurized cans sprayed mist, ropes twirled, and serapes or seraps. How do you say that?
I think it's serapes.
Yeah, serapes waved under the fluorescent lights. The book says Lysergica Go-Go was one of the more influential, if less remembered, events of the 1960s. Dell had little interest in rock and roll, but was an enthusiastic supporter of the anarchic spirit the music represented. And he claimed in this show to have invented the rock and roll light show that would, you know, become a big thing in like the years to come. I guess he had been obsessed with photography and optics for a long time, and got a bunch of projectors, dripped various colored dyes on the glass plates,
optics and lights. Yeah,
right. Just like what's his name, Owsley Stanley's obsession with like the wall of sound.
Yeah, and
you
John
had these
B,
like,
yeah,
right,
right.
Yeah, so I guess whenever you watch like because eventually he got the Grateful Dead like interested in this stuff, and he started doing light shows for the Grateful Dead and for the Mothers of Invention and Frank Zappa and became like friends with those guys for a little while. So this was held on November 26, 1965. And it was also, I guess, the program described it as, quote, an entertainment calculated to astound the senses, based on the manual by Metzner, Alpert, that's Ram Dass, and Leary, based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, yeah. And it is kind of interesting. It reminds me of some like weird scenes inside the canyon stuff where, because Dell says, I've got nothing against rock and roll. We'll paint up the dancers, shine some ultraviolet lights on them, and then I'll do a light show. So we did this Liturgica Go-Go, the first time light shows and rock ever appeared together. He's basically like he's very apathetic about the music itself, just like I feel like Dave McGowan covered in like Jim Morrison had no interest in music before like The Doors or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like he's actually quite apathetic about the music itself, but just the vibes. He's very interested in the vibes and melting people's brains and doing all this kind of stuff. And I think there's a flyer. So he's not telling it. This actually happened. And I think the Grateful Dead flyer that had him like advertised it as like Del Close and his Phantasmagoria, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how they described it. And so I mean, he got in with these like, basically like these Suslords of the hippie movement. He also was at he started hanging out with the Merry Pranksters around the same time. He was in attendance at the first LA acid test that was put on by the Merry Pranksters in February 6, 1966 at the Valley Unitarian Church. So that was the first time. I think they'd already done the ones at Stanford with the Grateful Dead / Warlocks. And then they came down to LA for a while. I think they cooked up a bunch of LSD in Watts, and then they started doing LA acid tests down here. I mean, and I think he did lights. He might have done lights for that. Yeah, because Wavy Gravy introduced him to the whole scene, and they participated in the group LSD experiment sponsored by Ken Kesey, sponsored by the CIA, but run by Ken Kesey's Merry Pranksters, Neil Cassidy. He had a lot of run-ins with Neil Cassidy.
Yeah, Neil Cassidy.
Right. Yeah, this is how it was described by the LA Free Press, that Neil Cassidy went out on an hour's worth of fascinating word salad over a mic while interferometric Del Close began casting magical and ineffable colors onto a wall, directed only by his spontaneous explorations of what he was doing. Hugh Romney began a monologue like an incantation while watching a film being shown on another section of the wall. Okay. Yeah, so interesting. It actually mentions here that while he was doing this, that like I think you said LSD was not necessarily like his favorite drug ever. And he would rig the light shows for the acid test. And it says he was the only one allowed not to drop acid. He preferred to shoot speed instead.
Whenever that comes up, you know, like everyone else is doing this drug, but there's one exception. Always a very detail. Yeah.
Whether it's Charles Manson or Hugh Hefner or people like that. So
example,
so he liked to shoot speed instead of doing more than he liked doing acid. So he would just be like on like a huge amount of amphetamines, like doing this light shit while everyone's tripping on acid. And like what could ever go wrong with that, right? It's never sus to be the one guy who's only on amphetamines. In a room full of acid heads. I mean, that's literally what Manson kind of ended up doing.
True, yes.
Yeah, so that's what he was kind of getting into. And I guess at some point... Oh, yeah, Neil Cassidy also, like, yelled at him once because he showed up wearing basically what he called, like, a Blues Brothers type outfit because he was, like, a beatnik. And Neil Cassidy was like, hey, what are you trying to do, be 15 years out of date? So Dell says he quickly let his hair grow out and changed his dress style. Protective coloration, see? But honestly, I never took any of it very seriously. I never gave up on being a beatnik. The whole psychedelic thing was co-opted so quick. As soon as people started wearing beads, they opened up bead shops. It got too commercialized. Where we used to do mescaline for a day and meditate, these kids got hold of it and just scarfed it down. The beatniks were on a mystical trip. We were the holy barbarians. But the 60s people, they were either politicized or stoned. The beats were apolitical. There was no way to politicize or commercialize them. Frankly, I thought the whole revolution was a joke because if it had succeeded, look at who would have been running things. It reminded me of the Dada Manifesto. Destroy everything. Replace it with nothing. Cool.
Great.
Yeah,
Yes.
replace it with nothing. Yeah, so I guess he's not very political, though he did say when he goes in 1967 to San Francisco to join, what was it called? The committee.
Yeah.
He says that he had to basically become a Marxist for 5 years.
It's funny that he like had to do it for like comedy reasons. Like, you know, yeah. The
He said
politics
that, like,
were
as
all
an
like
actor,
subordinate to the comedy. Yeah. Like
he said as an actor, he had to play the insight role of somebody who had Marxist politics for 5 years while he was working with the group. So I mean, basically just admitting that
yeah.
he just like crazy. Talk about a real crazy Dell was just
Yeah.
pretending to be a hardcore Marxist, but yeah, in reality, pretty much not interested.
Known for like, despite being like known for like making, you know, being the house metaphysician of SNL when it truly got political and it criticized Nixon or whatever, you know, when it was really subversive.
Ford, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it was Ford. You're right. They
I don't think
criticized
they did.
how he was clumsy. They took him down for being clumsy.
Do you think SNL? I had actually never looked back and see. Did SNL even like make jokes about Iran-Contra in the 80s? Like it seems like they were.
I'm gonna look up
SNL
SNL Iran-Contra right now. I know that they made fun of Gerald Ford for being clumsy. Oh,
Yeah.
oof. I'm seeing. Okay, let me look. I need to watch this because I'm seeing a skit called President Reagan Mastermind, and I can't say with confidence, but I have a strong feeling that this is going to be like satirizing the idea that Reagan knew about Iran-Contra.
He's too stupid to do anything
Yeah.
about it. Oh god,
it's fucking
General
6
Electric.
minutes long, of
Gotta love
course.
it. Oh, of course. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm willing to assume that they dropped the ball. To put it mildly,
generally
in the
they
80s.
do. Yeah, of course, comments are turned off, so I can't get anybody's summary. Okay, this is the joke. President Reagan, Phil Hartman, acts hopeless and clueless in public, but in private, he's an evil mastermind who knows every detail about everything happening in his administration. So I guess the joke is like, haha, like, you know.
He's pretending
he
to be
doesn't-
dumb and senile. But
Well,
like,
I guess the joke is like, wouldn't it be funny if he actually
Yeah.
were an evil mastermind who knew everything
Yeah,
that was
'cause
happening?
that's
in
so
his administration?
unbelievable,
Yeah, it's
'cause
so
he's
wacky.
so
like that's so
stupid.
funny to think
he's such a
that
dummy.
he would know things. Yeah.
Where have I heard this
I
before?
haven't watched the sketch, so hopefully I'm describing it accurately, but I'm pretty sure. I mean, based on SNL's track record during my own lifetime, I think I can
Not
say
good.
Yeah, they were definitely...
That's actually a standard go-to is like kind of deflect, like trick people by portraying the president who's doing something really bad as just dumb.
Hamburgers! I need my hamburgers and Kofifi.
Strategery. Remember that shit?
Yeah, of course, yes.
Right? Yeah. But George
Yeah.
W.
I'm
all
like
that shit.
I'm scarred for life by like having to see Alec Baldwin's awful Trump impression for like, you know, just for 4 years. I might have like just
was
lost
bad.
my mind. It was the worst impression ever.
Absolutely terrible.
Fist bump.
Absolutely terrible.
For access to the full-length episode, subscribe to the Hour of Frequency at patreon.com/subliminaljihad.